Simon, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dion. Excited.
Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about the story of Culture Kings and where you first started?
Yeah, so I started at the markets. I was just one of that kid, want to be an entrepreneur, day dot. Set a goal in grade 10. I'm never going to work for anyone my whole life. I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and started first weekend out of the markets. I learned how to sell because I just imported these consumer electronics from like Alibaba and
Mhm.
had to sell my way out of it. I was there though for 7 years. So a lot of people
Right.
think it's over. I was at the markets for 7 years and got really good at selling. So I could just sell on the weekends and make a couple of grand or whatever. And then I would start these businesses during the week, and every single one went to zero. So I had lots of trial and failures, but I suppose I could always rely on this ability to sell my way out on the weekend and generate this cash. But in that process, I really learned what my key thing that led to Culture Kings, which was people were buying a feeling, an emotion. They weren't actually buying the product. And I realized this as a sales skills that when I got good at it, is I realized I could generate enthusiasm, generate excitement in myself, get a crowd going, get them excited. And the simple fact of when two people meet, as long as there's a feeling of commonality, rapport, whoever has more certainty influences the other person. I just simply say, get in line, everyone get your $50 out, and bang, 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 bang. And I could just convert. And I always drilled it back to of like, people are selling emotion, not a product. And I suppose my big gap happened in clothing was that I did this Schoolies merchandise, which was just me being a hustler kid, basically wanting to go back to Schoolies every year and trying to make it like there was an excuse and sell this Schoolies merchandise. But one was just a hotel slipper with Gold Coast Schoolies on it. And I
Yeah.
met my wife at the time we were seeing each other. She got fired from Zaps like the week before Schoolies. I'm like, oh, come help me with this Schoolies slippers, because this was 2008. And
Yeah.
then I realized like, okay, I'm a salesman and I can create this marketing and hype, but operations, I was terrible. But
Right.
she filled that gap and she made the process and the part, and we just crushed it, that Schoolies. And we made like 100 grand out of
Oh,
just
really?
a hotel slipper. And from then though, I fell in love with this hype and trend and how you can influence a crowd and the marketing. And this was the early days of influencer marketing and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I sort of had a love for streetwear on top of that. And then I was always a big customer of it. I was like the biggest customer in Australia of this place called Carmeloop, buying sell. And then I was like, oh, I reckon there's a big opportunity here, because and I always thought of this of retail stores. I was
Yeah.
like, they do nothing to actually sell the product. And I'm like, their stuff is the easiest to sell. I remember I'd sit out the front of General Pants at Pack Fair and I'm just like, I'd get pissed off like my mates walking in there. I'm like, oh, do you know how easy that stuff is to sell? And look at the guys standing there. How's it going today, guys? After anything in particular? I'm like, oh, I can sell it. It's like, it's the easiest. I could sell those friggin' $400 Subi jeans like that,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I suppose that's where I sort of saw the gap. So I just started with streetwear at the markets and then built from there. eBay, took a risk on a first store in Southport, got a little bit of traction there, then got the next one in Brisbane, and just it was very simple. And I'd learned from the markets of really running what I would call a daily P&L. And I
Yeah.
learned this from my margins, 50%, 10% rent, 10% wages, 10% other shit, and make 20% profit. And that was the sort of blueprint that I carried across. And then I realized, oh, wait, what about if we had vertical labels so we could just push that margin up a little bit? What about if we invested this bit more on the marketing side and could drive it? And that's what we did. And we just would make the profit and reinvest it every year into the next store. And it was very slow process of one store per year pretty much. And we never raised any money. We never got any debt or anything. So we just would only invest what we had to store. But I think in doing that, yes, we went a bit slower, but we definitely forced us to really build and train that model that it was so dialed. This is where, again, with my wife being such that partnership, I know without her, I would have got, sometimes says the carny in me, try and make
Yeah,
every
right.
freaking
Yeah.
dollar there is, and sometimes I get, where she had a lot more of that art side where it was, okay, how do we,
More pragmatic, right?
yeah,
Around the real dollars and cents, and actually every day that you've got to actually do the stuff that needs to be done that you might not find as much fun.
exactly. And not get distracted, because it's very
Yeah.
easy as an entrepreneur to be the shiny light, and it's the opportunity. One of the things I'm, dealing with at this stage of my life is so much opportunity and part everything moving so fast, but it is a bit like you still got to build it back to, and those foundations of compounding. And I think that's everyone talks about the compounding of interest and wealth, but there's so much
Yeah.
of that compounding of skills in a business. And, when you have great team that are there for a while, that are all
Yeah.
learning and growing, just that stacked compounding just creates such a difference. And I really think this was one of our key secrets unlocking in retail, is we were able to ignite retail talent, that
Yeah.
we could understand them and get them excited about our vision, our mission, and our values, our purpose, creating magic moments for our customers. And I see this with a lot of retail companies now. I'm like, you don't motivate retail staff with like your dashboards and your
Yeah.
KPIs. They don't choose to be in retail because they want to chase down some KPI. They just want to
Yeah.
talk to people and have
Yeah.
fun, and they like it. But you can lean into that. And that's what we did, and focus them on, well, this is what we do at Culture Kings. At the end of our life is, we want to create magic moments for our customers, our teammates, and ourselves. We don't just hope they show up. We create them, and we
Yeah.
force this, and we drew it to them of like, someone's to walk in like this, be all scared. Oh my God, this shop's so cool, everything. And your job is to light them up.
Yeah.
And you want them to leave with a cape on their back and they fly out the store. And we would create this. It really worked. It ignited that retail talent that we could,
Yeah.
and held them there, which was so good, because then that compounding of skills and learning, and how that feedback loop would drive back through us, and we could make better product and even better experience. And that's what would build it. And we had so many of
Yeah.
these key retail people that when we went to open a new store, we would call it the import team, right? And we'd
Oh,
bring in
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
8, 10 people that are proven. They would set such a standard. Everyone else was like, whoa, right? And that was the blueprint, because once you
Yeah.
set that standard, everyone could live up to it and know that's how we delivered and how we did it. And I always remember so much of those store openings of doing with the team and going out to dinner, and the busting ass to get the store open, then having this crazy party after, and just being this feeling of camaraderie of a team of work hard, play hard, and make those magic moments. But that retail part was such a key. And I do think compounding those skills of that staff of that duration is the people, that was everything.
I think it's dramatically underrated. You talk about when you were year 10, deciding what you wanted to do, you go out into the markets. Because I think those skills that the kids just getting out there, talking to people, working in retail, working in fast food, you're still getting people skills, right? Young people getting those skills is dramatically underrated.
Hugely. I cannot stress, I believe, that sales skills influence. I'm actually
Yep.
talking at one of this mob charity. I'm doing a whole sales class and influence and communication. I believe it is like the most foundational skill. If you can teach a kid that, where they can sell, they can influence someone, they never actually have to worry about money, right?
Yeah.
Because there's always jobs for salespeople, and you can just go commission and go bang.
Yeah.
And look, there's commission of people doing solar making 400 grand. These real estate agents, millions a year. Josh Tesla paying 12 million in gross commission this year. It's like,
Yeah. Right.
I had a business turning over $100 million. I could not pull 12 million out of it. Like, the thing
Yeah.
would collapse. That is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And that is the power of skills of sales and communication skills. And I believe it's such a fundamental skill. And the earlier you learn it, the better. Every other skill is multiplied on top of that. And I always tell this is like I had 1,000 staff. I saw so many brilliant people that were so smart. They knew everything, but they couldn't communicate their ideas or more influence them that people would take action on it. You know, they're in the meeting, they're like, oh, I think we should try this AI plugin and this and everyone. Anyway, have a good
Yeah.
weekend. See you next week. And everyone leaves. Nothing would happen. I'm like, it would drive me nuts when I thought
Yeah.
back later. I was like, oh my God, and they said, oh, I suggested this like a year ago. But I'm like,
Yeah. It might have been
"Dude,
really valuable, right? But if you can't
but
communicate it, it's pointless.
it just dies. And
Yeah.
it's that thing is you've got to have this. It is just so important of communication. If you don't land and drive behavior change, it doesn't matter what you said, right?
Mm.
It's to think of that first. People have this thing of sales. It's like, oh, I don't want to be a salesperson, or it's like,
Yeah.
has like this like cringy car salesman where it's like, it is so opposite. Like this is such the fundamental skill. And it's a skill just like anything. You've got it, you can learn it, you practice it, you train it like a muscle, and you have to
Mhm.
keep using it. Because if you lose it, just like any skill, if you stop using it, you will lose it. And whenever I'd go into the store, I would jump on the floor and show them how it's done and make the
Yeah.
sale, do the thing, show them how to pre-frame, show them how to do high warmth, high confidence greeting, show them how, when they go in the change room, how to link the compliment at the right time, how to build the outfit, how to upsell. This was such like, I would always try and practice it as much as possible and use it, but then use that same skills, whether it was through Facebook ads, through content, through selling the business, selling private equity,
Yeah.
selling the IM to people on the dream and the vision.
I mean, any of that stuff, sales or to reframe it, even negotiation, right?
Yeah,
It's all, everything's a negotiation in some way, shape or form. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Putting your kids to bed, doing this, it doesn't matter. Everything is a negotiation of some description.
yeah,
So the better you are at doing those things, the better off you are in life, right?
exactly. And I do think there's not enough time dedicated
Yeah.
and put to it and trained and learned. But yeah, I'm excited to teach these kids. I love it so much. And I love it when I see people grasp it and you see that,
Yeah.
that thing click in them and they're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
"Got it," and then they use it. Cause I just know in that moment forward, their freaking life will be different.
Yeah. Or
They
even when
will.
you see someone who's got that fire, right? That you meet and you go, oh, that person's really, they've got that fire.
Yeah.
Because you can't teach that, I reckon.
Yeah. We have this argument. I think it's there in people. It can be unlocked.
Okay.
Like, I sort of feel some people have that potential, but we get so drawn to comfort and certainty. You need that man to crack it.
Yeah.
You need something big enough that you want, that you decide like, nah, and it just unleashes. I definitely, yeah, it is. I feel it's there to a degree, but just how hard it is to unlock, and some are just not worth how many cracks are you going to have?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you can teach sales, you can teach negotiation. I think sometimes that some people have that spark or that drive that's just within them. And yes, maybe you can unlock it or not. There's people who are really self-motivated and some people aren't. You can teach anyone sales if they're willing to learn. But
Yeah.
the real driven ones are the ones who they run themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Now, in terms of the business, you started from scratch. You didn't raise any money along the way and you had a huge exit and it's been a fantastic business story. If you had your time over again, what would you have done differently?
I don't want to say I've got any regrets. Like a lot of it, whatever happens, it led to the next phase of growth.
Yep,
Everything that broke led to building back stronger and a better outcome. If I was to do it again now, though, how would I do it differently? And I do think
Yeah.
the market's changed. I do believe I could get that similar sort of thing to say $50 million with only 5 or 6 staff now. That is just how lean you can run it now, how much tech has actually nuked so much of it. And
Yeah.
that you just need to focus on key parts like the creative. You can unlock such scale now. But my thing now is like, say if it was just real building, like you wouldn't use a model or use a studio, right? That would all just be an AI generated one with your perfect where you've got the exact model with the exact like right amount of tattoos, the right look, the right feel, the right vibe, that's your one. That could all be auto generated. You could do so many different products and stuff on pre-order, etc., where you don't even have to make it. You're not even taking inventory risk. You could do just how easy it is now to run simple marketing and stuff yourself, like using Google Performance Max. Their AI in there is incredible. Yeah, Facebook and their Advantage Plus, the AI is just wiped out pretty much the whole targeting. The funnel does it automatically. You run
Okay.
it really simple creative testing campaign where you're testing new creatives. When you get a winner, you put it into your Advantage Plus, which is your AI campaign, and you scale it
Yep.
and
Yep.
really run your numbers clean so you can see a daily P&L. And you just basically see your margins, see what drops to the bottom line, and you run this really simple traffic light system that I know we had, and I've got it now working for a few other businesses. Is amazing. Is if it's green, you scale, you
Yep.
creep up the budget. It's all working. You're profitably growing. If it's yellow, you're sort of in this feather the throttle part, right?
Yep.
The dollars, and is it balancing? And if it's red, something's not working and you got to dial the budget back. And
Yep.
and you just keep feeding this machine with better and better creative. You're looking at the creative, learning from it, learning how to edit it, make it better, throwing new ideas, understanding different angles, and really focusing that part of the business of the creative and unlock, and really using these theories of remembering people aren't buying a product, they're buying a feeling, an emotion. How do you connect that with the content? How do you solve the problem? And feeding that in, that the funnel is automatically built through the AI, which is you've got your awareness, you got your consideration, and you got your conversion down the bottom, and just how
Yep.
you feed it right. And you can really build that value chain flywheel, automate like so much of finance functions or buying or decision making can be automated and simplified. And I would run it very lean and tight.
How many people are running their businesses in retail or e-commerce or any of those types of spaces like that now, though? I mean, it's obviously early days still in AI, but it's also not, right? If you're as across this stuff as much as anybody I know, what percentage of the market is making use of these tools and who aren't? Because it's going to create a massive gap, isn't it?
I suppose a lot are using Google Performance and Max and Advantage Plus, but maybe haven't realized of just how much potential and scale, and a lot are still doing stuff, right?
Right.
Where, say, for example, either the employees getting the benefit is that the job that used to take them 7
Yeah.
hours now takes them 10 minutes, or the
Yeah.
agency that they're paying 10 grand a month to is basically doing what used to
Yeah.
be 20 hours work, they're doing in 40 minutes, but they're still getting the 10 grand. That's where I sort of feel some people haven't sort of realized yet and go, wait a minute. And then you can sort of really streamline it. But
Yeah.
that's why I got this retailtainment, which is my step. I want to create a private equity firm. As I'm going through the process, I love the whole idea of building and scaling companies. And I'm like, I really want to test it and get these runs on the board with these ones. And just my first sort of ones I'm working with now, and it's so exciting because I can see the opportunity and there are definitely companies out there that are doing like 30 mil
Yeah.
plus with 5 staff, and it's wild.
Those numbers are crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, and by comparison, you should talk about like you could now, if you started, you'd get to 50 mil with 5, 6 staff. By comparison, how many staff did that look like before?
Yeah, hundreds.
Oh,
Like,
really?
for example, okay, I would have 5 media buyers at Culture Kings, right? Because this is when there
Mhm.
was so much thing of chopping up the data and the thing. That is completely gone now, right?
Yeah.
That is, I could do it in half an hour a week, an hour a week sort of thing. Say even in email, there used to be so many graphic designers and chopping up and building all the flows where so much of that you can template, automate, and it's just simple Canva, and you're switching out the photos and it's not that hard. Like once those flows are built, the segments, it's just dropped so much of that workload out that was there before. And this is
Yeah.
happening more and more every day, right? We're seeing, I did a video about, Klarna, and they wiped out like 700 jobs with their AI bot that they built with OpenAI, and it's
Yep.
adds $40 million to their bottom line. But not only that, the NPS, the rating score, is way higher from an AI answered solution than from a human.
Yeah.
And this
Right.
is the thing, it's happening at such a rate of pace that is going to wipe out the customer service tickets, because it's going to answer it better than any person
Yeah.
could, because it's going to have every bit of context, every bit of knowledge, and right when 24/7 instantly get them back a solution. And I know where people go like, oh, this and these jobs, but the jobs will be started on the creative. And my more
Yeah.
thing is like, and people go, oh, 50 million with 5 or 6 thing. I'm like, don't think this is taking from the smaller guy. This is chipping away at the dinosaur ones, because
Yeah.
they're stuck with hundreds and thousands of stuff and they can't pivot. And you can just bang, nail a niche in the market and target that section of the audience and do it so much better and grab that market share, run that value chain tighter. I actually feel it's one of the biggest opportunities for entrepreneurs and to create market share. Like, I'm super bullish on the big ones, the Google, the OpenAI,
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
Facebook, and they're even Tesla, and more way for them to get leverage and more scale. But it's sort of these ones that sit in the middle, the no man's land of like, they're still lumped with all the costs and all the expenses and all the so many people that will dig their heels in on the
Yeah.
back of this AI craze of not wanting to adapt it, not wanting to pivot and move as quick, is that they will just lose market share to these nimble, fast brands that can appeal to the customer, win on creative. They're gonna outbid them out.
Who are these dinosaur type companies? You're talking about the retailers, and or is it across all industries in your, it probably is across all industries, but the first thing I think of when you're talking about these nimble companies coming through, being able to take big chunks of revenue and sales from the dinosaurs, if you like there's a lot of big companies in retail for a start. They just can't turn that ship around in the same way.
No.
And their margins are thin and they've got all sorts of issues. Everyone always thought that the online sales side of things would spell the end of the retailers. And it did to a large extent in many ways, but they evolved and there's still a place for it. Does the AI side of things change that, just in terms of the numbers of people working at these firms not being needed anymore down the track because those revenues are going somewhere else? How does that play out in your mind?
I can't see for how quick AI is moving and wiping out the jobs, how quick they can be created the other side.
No, well, they're separate issues, right? I think we
Yeah.
get wrapped up in that concept because I wrote about this the other day, where people think about this whole AI thing and they go, they get to a point where they can't compute what it means to lose that many jobs because, what about the jobs? Well, that's a separate issue. That'll sort itself out over here.
Yeah.
What is going to happen is that lots of jobs are going to be lost, because now, whether they are created or not, we don't know quite yet. We assume they will be created in all sorts of other areas because that's what's historically happened.
Yeah.
And maybe it does. Probably it does. We don't know what those things are.
And
But
yeah.
that doesn't matter. The reality is all these jobs over here are going to go. That is without question. Right?
Yes. And I suppose like one of the worst things though is from an employer or an employee is to fight the tech change, like to either
Yeah.
put your head under, pretend it's not there, or pretend you can't. Like, you have to stay on. I'm playing around with the integrations. I'm doing it myself. I'm understanding how it plugs together. I'm understanding how we can make decisions quicker, how we can move faster in every sort of way. And I still feel like I actually was thinking of this, like so many of these companies need it. I was like, I just want to, how do I teach these kids or something to do it? But like a simple content creator job where a kid can just take an iPhone, go to a business, understand what their pain point is, shoot all this content, edit it in CapCut, right? On their phone or on a laptop. They could do it all themselves. That is like so valuable. So many of these businesses need this right now because they're like a deer in headlights where to start. And the stupidest thing is they think, oh, I've got to go book a video editor and set up a whole tripod and stuff. what are you doing? That's never going to
Yeah.
work. The pro footage, the second you see that on your feed, you swipe past it. You have
Yeah.
to get this authentic, congruent, and really go to your first principles of why is the customer buying your product? What's the problem you solve? Give me the founder story. Those just crush so hard on ads now. But all you need, and this is where I was like, I want to do it. But a kid, you have a Rode mic and your phone and you go set it up and do it. And you could charge these people, I don't know, 200, 500 bucks. I
Yep.
had so many lining up. And if I just, spend a bit of time where you could understand the ads data as well, where you could
Yep.
and look at hook rate and hold rate. Hook rate, you can work this out as a custom metric. How much will people watch the first 3 seconds, right? And then you
Mhm.
can sort of see of what percentage, and because if you can just make that a little bit better, oh my God, that just can revolutionize your ad performance. And then you've got hold rate, how much watch the whole video. So you can see when they're dropping out and go, okay, re-edit it, right? That's too boring. Chop it there, make it quicker. And see if you art and science coming together. But I'm like, well, there's no reason that isn't one kid with their smartphone and a road bike could go around and create business content for businesses so freaking valuable. And
Yep.
that's an example of there's so many of those jobs there now. People just don't know because
Yeah.
no one's out there, or they're or they're videographers or this, where you just need to be able to shoot that, do the cap cut and understand. But you're the director, you're the producer, you're the video editor, you're the ads data person all in one. And because you're all in one, you actually have a way better understanding and you don't have as many breaks in the value chain that it doesn't, passing, oh, wait. And in the editor, why don't you shoot it this way? And all the part that can be all brought into one role now. And you just need to move it faster because this is the other thing is you need the volume of business. Some businesses don't realize they need to put out 25 of those videos a week. And it's
Yeah. Right.
oh, okay. That's where rather than these people spending over here, you do that. Oh my God, completely change what your business could look like overnight.
I mean, you talk about that young person who can go out and do all that sort of content, and that's how the game's changed. How long before you just type that prompt into Sora or one of those types of video type AI systems and just type in the type of stuff you want and it's all done there? How long before that type of thing becomes a reality?
Definitely like the Sora thing, every movie studio that was investing in physical
Yeah.
stopped work when that came
Yeah.
out. It is so mind blowing of what could be actually, just
Possible.
around
Yeah.
the corner. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but I still believe, and this is where I'm a big bullish on that founder led content, because people they're going to get flooded with this AI stuff. Is that
Yeah.
remember, brand is just a measure of trust.
Yeah. It's still trust, right? It all comes back to trust.
So that personality part is so crucial. And this is where I try and get founders. I'm like, if you can jump on this camera, I know it will work better.
Yeah.
And you don't want to build this and do it on all to a staff member because your competitor could just go pay them more.
You go employ
take all
them,
your
right?
brand equity. It's
Yeah.
it's part of you need to sort of build that into it. So I do definitely think though, Sora is going to be revolutionary in the content creation and what's going to come of. I love that theory how basically movies become video games and then video games become something we can't even imagine yet, but
Yes.
so interactive, so party, because it can all just be like watching the movie and you choose which way to go left.
Oh, yeah. I think it's mind blowing, right? Because that is not very far away. It wasn't that long ago you could type in prompts and get some crappy sort of picture. And now you're getting video for a minute.
Yeah.
And give it another 12, 18 months, you wouldn't want to be an advertising agency that does the whole production of ads when some kid's going to be able to write a prompt and create an ad campaign that's the equivalent of theirs. Obviously, there's a little bit around that that's not going to be exactly, but theoretically, those sorts of things can be done. And like you say, whether it's a movie or a TV series, what do I feel like watching tonight? Type it in. There you go.
Yeah.
Real time. That's not that far away. It sounds ridiculous, but it's not far away.
It's definitely, it's exciting, but I've never felt, especially in the tech or the part, I've had so many of those moments like where I'm just like, oh my God, this like changes everything. Through that journey of sort of the early days of Shopify and even Afterpay, I was early by the shelves. Oh, like this is a game changer. This is
Yeah.
awesome. But it was never like, oh my God, this just totally resets everything,
Yeah.
which is something like Sora can basically do. And as we're seeing that more and more, the new Gemini with all their Google AI agents and stuff, and it's just absolutely
Oh, it's mind blowing, right? Yeah, it is mind blowing. Do you, when you take a step back as a parent, do you look at the AI stuff and does it make you concerned at all, or you don't care about that stuff? How do you view it?
definitely as a parent. I do sort of think once there's the AGI, like, well, how won't a model run the whole company? There won't actually be a CEO. We all just report to the model because it's going to fucking know the answer more than any
Yeah.
one of us. But then I do sort of think like, how is it all going to sort of unfold down in the future? But I do think creativity, I do think live events and experiences, the same way we've gone through all this and streaming, but live sports more valuable than ever, right? Because people
Yeah.
still want live, right? They
Mhm.
want the experience, the feeling and the emotion. So for me, it's about, as a parent, I've been trying to think about how do I train that creative muscle to
Yep.
really get them to express and be fully without fear and practice on the communication and tonality and really try and build them as to be a master of that, to be really trained in emotional regulation that they can train themselves to go into the right state at the right time. I think that's one of my biggest breakthroughs I had as an entrepreneur, realizing how important emotional regulation is in being an entrepreneur. And I learned that through the sales process markets, training myself to be able to go into that excited enthusiasm state, training myself to be determined when something broke rather than getting frustrated or blame or
Yep.
throw someone under the bus, to be no, determined, I'm going to solve this fucking problem. I'm going to run through this wall. I'll find the
Yep.
way, I'll make the way. And being able to regulate that emotion to choose the right state at the right time.
When did you
Increase,
realize that about yourself, Simon, in terms of that regulation? Because that takes people many years to learn in different ways, and some people never do, right? And how to harness that, right? Because I know exactly what you're talking about, and you're looking at those sort of things. When did you first notice, hang on, this is something I've got to work out how to harness?
you read it in all the sort of books, and it's, a huge part of the whole self-help
Yeah.
industry. But I think it hit for me when I met this neuroscientist, Alan Watkins. I did this executive coaching with him, which was awesome. He really laid it out on the chart. I always put it on my Instagram, high emotion, high energy, low energy, positive emotion, negative emotion. It's like an axis.
Okay, into a quadrants.
Yeah, and you just, where am I regulated on it? But understanding that we actually have a set point, where's our average? And then it's like, fuck, our average is our identity. That's who we are. And
Yeah,
I
right.
always thought, he said, how's it changed over the years? And I was like, it was a big thing to me at the time. We're turning over like, say, 20, $30 million. And I was like comparing it back to the time I was at the markets. And I was like, you would think, okay, I went from the markets sweating bullets every weekend in that tin
Yeah.
shed out there, busting ass to try and make $1, to now I've got a 20, $30 million business and all this stuff. You'd think my emotional set point, my average would have gone way more positive. And it
Yeah.
was like, it was exactly the same. Because
Okay.
yes, I could get passionate and determined, but also I get frustrated and pissed off all the time. And it sat
Right.
basically in the middle. And that's where I was like, oh my God, what's the point if I haven't even gone? And then I
Yeah.
just realized I needed to practice these things like gratitude and appreciation, authentic and congruent. Like, I think authentic such a key emotion, because being authentic is that you've got zero fear there. And you
Yeah.
realize that's actually so rare as humans, because that's why when we see authentic content, it grabs us so much, because we realize most of the time we're walking around with fucking an underlying fear. What is this thing? What about if I say the
Yeah.
wrong thing? And
Yeah.
and so as I could define these sort of emotions and then go, I'm going to practice and train myself, train appreciation, gratitude, train to be authentic or congruent, and still train that passion and determine, and being able to train it to turn on like a switch. Huge breakthrough. And my emotional set point went way, way more positive, more than I can imagine. But Yeah, and we went from 20, 30 million to 300 million. So it was
And that's obviously correlated very strongly with that particular point in time and making those realizations, right?
definitely. And I always go like so many of these moments I have, fire, we lost $10 million in a day. Thought if I didn't, I remember those moments. I'm like, no, I'm training myself. I'm here. Like I'm determined as you could throw me back out on the street with
Yeah.
$50 in my pocket. I'll be able to build this thing back. And it was that
Yeah. Okay.
determined state. In through that time, after we had that fire, in that 3 days, I was more productive than I've ever been in my life. But so through that emotional regulation and that awareness and journey, and you just got to practice and train it. It's a muscle. The more you
Yeah.
go to it, the more that becomes you, the more that becomes your identity. The more you practice frustration or pissed off or
Yeah.
scared, anxiety or depression,
Becomes a downward spiral, right?
it becomes, yeah. I always say it's the flow state on this side or the doom loop on this side. Like
The
you gotta
doom loop. Yeah.
choose,
Yeah. Yeah.
you got to
There you
choose
go.
your side.
What sort of impact did that have on you from a personal perspective outside of work? Did you notice differences just because you adopted that mindset or those learnings? What changes did you notice there?
Definitely. I noticed so much more of my own personal growth in myself, in how I was a leader through the team, in with my family, with our kids and my wife and everything. That emotional regulation part, like,
Yep.
and I wish we could measure it. Like all the new tech that's coming, we'll be able to measure this, which will be such a
Yeah. Right.
game changer. You think like Loop or HRV is good, that stuff will just, be everything because the golden rule of anything, what's measured gets managed,
Yeah.
what's managed gets improved.
Yeah.
So, but I just know for myself, I improved it so much more through that zone. And this was where it was so good. Is I could make my decisions, especially long-term ones based on this, like to do the deal. This was where it was great to step back and think, well, what is the emotions that
Yeah.
I want to feel and which decision will make me feel this way and move my average, my baseline more this way, more positive.
Can you take us through that a little bit, Simon, if you can, if you want to,
Yeah.
around you had that sort of exit in terms of selling down some of the business for a substantial amount of money. I think it was about 300 million. Is that right?
Yeah.
Take us through that thought process around, I mean, that's your baby, right? You've started from where you started from. No one else feels that like you feel that. I'm really interested to hear your thinking.
So as we'd bootstrapped it and we'd grown it up to that point, I did realize, like, just from a simple diversification point of view, I was 99.9% of my wealth was in one asset. And it was this thing, as much as it was a big business, I always thought, oh, when I get past 50 million, I'll feel, more relaxed or more free.
Yeah.
If I get past 100 million, that's when I would. And and it is this thing that a lot of entrepreneurs don't talk about. You shouldn't talk about it to your staff, but other entrepreneurs will know is that you don't realize as big as you get the business, this pressure on your neck, it never goes away. That
Yeah. Right.
pressure of holding, and especially in the e-com space, one customer service can click on the wrong pinching link and cook your whole database. Like
Mhm.
there's risk in it that a lot of us won't admit, but there is. And
Right.
it is part of, as we were doing it and growing it with 99.9% of our wealth, and we had two small kids and, we were leaving at 6 o'clock in the morning and racing back to get them a book. And I was always like, I do believe this brand can be a global brand. Iconic cities around the world, create the feeling, the state, the emotion, the Disneyland, the Sport Street, music, lifestyle,
Yeah.
culture. And I had that vision, but I was like, okay, I know a lot of Australian brands sort of try and take on the US and fail. And I was
Mm.
like, what would be great is that if I could take some money off the table, right? And especially the size it is now, I could take this money off the table where it's all fucking house money, the rest. If it
Yep.
goes to the moon or goes to the zero, it won't change my life at all. And I always had this number in my head. I actually wrote down this goal when I was a kid of like $40 million by 2024, which is this year, by 40 years
Oh,
old.
really?
I wanted
Yeah.
40 million. Because that was my number of like, well, that's complete. And it was 40 million
Yeah.
outside of the business. So, because
Yeah.
I
Right.
wanted that, because I always thought that invested, That's your
Yeah.
passive income,
Gets you a couple of million a year away you're
Yeah,
going.
yeah, you're not gonna, and it is. I truly believe I
Yeah.
called it. That's a number. Like, you're not gonna. There's nothing above that unless you're into stupid boats and planes. There's
Yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
else to buy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
nothing. It's probably a lot less than half that. But the thing is, though, I always sort of had that. So I was like, if I could get this money off, sell part, and in the rest, we could let it ride and really take on the US. So I'd had that in my head. And it was this thing, it's a hard thing to understand, especially as a fashion brand. You
Mm.
can get in your own bubble where you think, and I've seen lots of fashion guys do this and they cook it because you think everyone around you, you always pick the trend, you always know
Yeah.
what's working, and no one argues with you or
Yeah.
doubts you. And it can be quite intoxicating. And you think your brand can sort of stay this cool and relevant. But it is always the thing I'd seen so many before where they thought that and then boom, go to zero or go to thing. And I remember before, this guy was telling me, it was actually a story about this clothing brand LRG. And he was saying about, he was doing a deal to sell it for 100 mil, but the bank, it was 2008 and the bank was Lehman Brothers. That was the
Right.
investment bank. Anyway, it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
before it was supposed to settle. Anyway, it fell over. The deal fell over and the brand went to shit. Anyway,
Yeah.
and
Right.
it was like, I could feel like the tear in his eye for the thing. And I was just like, oh, I don't want to,
Yeah.
I suppose it burnt into me of like, I don't want to work all this way and do all this and miss on something. And so I
Yeah.
thought, if I could diversify, get that money off the table, that like, look, this is all house money, and
Yeah.
have that feeling that I don't have to do anything. Cause as much as you feel you got freedom as an entrepreneur, so many of us, when we run a business, you're not
Yeah.
fucking free at all. You can't
Yeah. Yeah.
go
Yeah.
away because the thing will just
You
collapse.
can't go away
Yeah.
and you can't switch off. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can never switch off. You can never take your foot off the gas for a second. And so I was always like, at least I don't have to. I can do it all from the love. And so, yeah, that was always part of the process. We were trying to do this pre-COVID. Then COVID hit. I'm like, oh, rip it off the market because no deal's going to happen. But we built such a great small value chain feedback loop. We could spot straight away because I was doing the ads every day and I
Yeah.
understood it. I could see it the second it jumped. The second they
Really?
introduced that job keeper and
Yeah.
straight away the sales and the ROAS. And I'm like, everyone pull back their spend. And I was just like, oh my God, gas it more than ever.
Oh, really? You saw it that clearly?
That, like, to the day, I remember even to the thing. So I think JobKeeper started on April. We never got it as a business, but fuck, our customer did for sure.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
it just ripped. And then I remember we just absolutely ripped May, absolutely ripped April, May. May we bought this house. And I remember
Yep.
that was before the property jump. I
Yeah.
remember telling all our staff, because they were all reading like the article on Daily Mail, like, because it was still like a bit like very the scary things of COVID.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
bought this $11 million house, it's like, and I always thought, I'm like, oh my God, interest ever, like property is going to go nuts because people are going to speed up their decisions and just move forward, and everyone work from home, want a better house anyway. I told them, you should buy property now because property is going to go up. I've got it on recording in May 2020. And within like 6 weeks, property just started to absolutely rip. But yeah, so I could see the core. Anyway, we kept going, and then everyone came knocking, that back pocket of 2020 because of interest rates and e-com was like the hottest thing in the world. And
Well,
I
there's real
remember
winners
straight
and
away-
losers out of COVID, right?
Yeah. I remember, and this is where it's so important to get the right advice, right? I had this Peter on my advisory board.
Yep.
They came and I was like, get fucked. There's no way I'm selling it. We're making $1 million bucks a week.
Good negotiating.
Yeah.
That's
Like, no fucking way would I ever sell this. And then Peter said this so well. He goes, you know what? You know how many businesses, when they want to sell their business, they can never sell it. I say, when you don't want to sell your business is actually the time you should. And I remember, even though he said it, I remember that higher self part of me.
Yeah.
I know
you
he's
knew that
fucking
was a
right.
moment.
I know he's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we went back and we negotiated And it wasn't even, we did it on a 600 mil valuation. I actually got a way higher offer, 850 for 100%, right?
Right. Yeah.
From one of the old Dinosaur ones, but I didn't want to sell 100. I still wanted to let it
Yeah. You still want to be
ride.
part of
And
it,
I was
right?
like, I did the whole decision make. It's what am I going to buy with 850? I'm not going to buy with 300, and
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
there. So I was like, just ride it. We flipped the rest in the IPO, and that was all part of the sort of process. But it was a amazing learning curve going through that whole and the private equity. And I learned
Yeah.
so much through the deal and IPO and everything. It was incredible. And it was a thing though, as we continued in that, because we had a holding company and yes, on the board. And even though I had the shares, I did feel this thing is, I remember someone saying to me, he's like, when you sell a majority of your company, you can't call yourself an entrepreneur anymore. You're an employee. And it was like,
Right.
I
Oh,
was
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I hate that, but it's actually fucking true. And
Yeah.
my
Right.
goal and my thing in life was always to never be a thing. As much as I tried it, it was just a different, from public and holding company for me.
The dynamic changes, right?
Yeah,
That's just part of the price you pay for creating a legacy wealth for your family. That's what you've done. Like,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
that part of that's just part of the process of exiting the business, but it is totally different. Even if you own a share of it, the whole bureaucracy changes, the whole thing changes. You lose autonomy. You can't act with the same pace. It's just how it works, right? Like, you hear this from every person who's exited a business.
I know. And I suppose I thought like, well, Elon Musk only owns 20% of Tesla and it's always
Yeah.
Elon's show, but
Yeah.
there's different elements to it there. And
Yeah.
I think that's that thing is I did sell the majority. And I know for me is it was really hard because I'd always been self-employed. It
Yeah.
was like, I'd never had anyone said I couldn't do anything or
Yeah.
challenged me. Yes, I loved the challenge, but I always made whatever decision I wanted at the end of the
Yeah.
day anyway, no matter what advisory board or anything. And it's
Yeah.
like that really, really hurt for me. And I just think for me, it was a great sort of learning process. But now I get to such an incredible feeling, I love working with other entrepreneurs and building and moving even quicker and faster than
Yeah.
ever. I love investing in different stuff. I love scaling. I love what we're doing with this retailtainment and showing this new sort of daily P&L blueprint and getting a lot more founders in the ad account, learning and seeing it. Cause it's like,
Yeah.
it's so easy to learn now. And then they've got the customer top of mind, 10 minutes a day. And you've got the exact customer in your head. You're knowing what they're clicking on. You're knowing what videos they're watching. You're knowing what's converting and what P&L is dropping to the bottom line every day. You can make so much better decisions throughout your day. Like some opportunity comes up, you can pounce on it because you have such a good feel of the overall business. And
How much of
that's
that is education, Simon, in terms of like you're talking about, like, this, but lots of other people out there probably don't. And is that because you're sort of giving them how to fish, eat for a day, teach them how to fish, you'll eat forever? And it's a little bit like that. If these big companies that do that sort of stuff, that effectively what you're doing there, if you're teaching people, you're letting them cut out the other guys that are charging millions for it. That's the middle ground, right? Is that teaching everyone else how to do it?
Yeah. And I suppose that's what I'm really finding out about how I can break it down into as simple and repeatable steps that can
Yeah.
be chunked and doing, because there still is a bit of art and science coming together. Like there's the creative side. And this is where I love to throw all those ideas, but you've got to be able to read the data and get readjusted every day on it, because
Yeah.
it's never what I think's cool or anyone on the team. Like people vote with their wallet. What did they actually buy?
Yeah.
Like, and that feedback loop just needs to spin as quick and as fast as possible. But I love the teaching thing. And it's that moment when you see it click for them, just like the sales thing. It's like, it is a really good feeling. I get why people dedicate their life to become a teacher and a thing. Like to be able to do it. I find it really enjoyable. So
Teaching, coaching, all of those things. And what is next for you? You've obviously got PE, you've got this side of things. There's a whole bunch of things. What's the next 5 years?
I suppose my big thing is that I'd love to create my own private equity fund where I take these smaller e-com companies and create this scale where we could have a whole group of them and they could just be compounding and really stack this compound learning. That's what I would love to get to.
Yep.
So I'm more building out my team and my process and how we could ever get to that. And that's why I love doing this with Retailtainment, really proving I know that we can add the value and that it works. And that's when we'll do it. But for me, I suppose the best part is I can choose what I do from most impact and most fun. And I do get like the private equity, the biggest stakes gets more of a rush. It is just the thing
Yeah.
is, as you get in business, the level becomes the rush. So I'd love to do that on the next phase and raise all
Well,
this billions of dollars of funds. That's why I'm starting my personal brand too, because I was like, this whole thing in the future, I can imagine I could just be on there and be like, swipe up, you could raise, $100 million
yeah.
for this fund. Next swipe up is like, we got these jobs available. You hire the most amazing talent that come in all pre-trained because they've watched all your stuff. And then the
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
one,
100%.
businesses that want to invest, and then you got the deal flow. And it's like,
You're already building aspects of it, aren't you?
so that could be in the 5 years, that could be the way that could happen.
You don't have to tell us what it is, but when you were younger, you said you wrote down, or you said you had the goal of 40 million by 2024. Have you got yourself another goal that you've put for 2044?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a billionaire. I suppose it was, even the early days was the markets at Culture Kings. I remember this one day looking up the sign and I was like,
Yep.
I swear this is going to be $1 billion company one day. Right. I remember saying that to myself. I'll get there one day on a long enough timeline just with compounding. But I suppose the earlier, the better. I definitely want to do it in my next
phase.
Yeah. I've met some ones where I'm like, shit, just that treadmill on the bigger level. I want to make sure I do experience and enjoy. And that's where I love so much to be able to work from home and do this and be at home every morning, breakfast with the kids, every dinner with them. Like that is just, I say no to pretty much.
That's priceless, right?
Yeah. It's just so, and you realize how quick it goes, it's like.
Let's go quick. And you want to be able to do that sort of stuff. Like you say, you want to get there, but you want to do it on your terms. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. So, mate, thanks very much for joining us on the show. It's been awesome to hear your insights across all sorts of topics. It's been really fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dion.